the the blueprint, the game plan was made in the 80s. Create a pandemic, you know, with a virus that's going wild, right? Only he was given Fauci was given like over $350 million to research this, to come up with drugs, new or repurposed, to handle the AIDS pandemic. And all they came up with was AZT.
Aaron Rodgers' melted Facebook brain is back again with more hard-hitting analysis.
And if you do even a smidge of research, and I know I'm not a, epidemiologist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an immunologist, whatever I can read though, right?
Let's revisit Daniel Tosh on this subject.
He's like, I know it's a novel concept, but I like to read. You. Oh, you like to read, and you've done all this research, so you know You know who else likes to read? Tons and tons of Catholic priests who have molested boys. So maybe reading's not so great. Maybe a little less time reading, more time scrolling Instagram and jerking off, and the world would be a better place.
Thanks, Daniel. He had another snippet that was so on the nose, we have to play it.
By the way, I don't have a problem with him if he would just come out and be like, hey, this is what I think. But it's when you start saying stuff like, this is what happened, and Fauci is a murderer and he wants everyone dead. It's like, couldn't you be wrong? I'm not going to be like, my wife and my kids died. Oh my goodness. How did they die? Well, I listened to my award-winning doctors from Beverly Hills instead of the quarterback for the Jets. Zach Wilson? No, not Zach Wilson. The other one that reads.
Glorious. Absolutely glorious. Now more from the babbling buffoon.
And I can learn and look things up just like any normal person. I can do my own research, which was so vilified.
It's vilified because you vilified it, Aaron.
To even question authority. But that was the game plan back then. Create an environment where only one thing works. Back then, AZT. Now, remdesivir until we get a vaccine, which, by the way, Anthony Fauci had stake in the Moderna vaccine. And we know Pfizer is one of the most criminally corrupt organizations ever. The fine they paid was the biggest in the history of the DOJ in 2009. Like, what are we talking about? We're going to put our full trust in science that can't be questioned.
Where to begin? A lot to get to here. But before we jump in, if you can, please do become a channel member. Go to youtube.com/TYT Sports. Click the join button to support this channel, and or go to tyt.com/join to support the network as a whole. As always, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So let's get into it, shall we? Long and short here. On a podcast called Look Into It with Eddie Bravo, Rodgers, who represents the New York Jets, would suggest the HIV/AIDS epidemic of the 80s was engineered by the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases with help from the federal government. To be clear, Dr. Anthony Fauci was instrumental in developing treatments that enable people with HIV to live long lives, but in the 80s, he was criticized for the government's response to the AIDS epidemic. Additionally, under the administrations of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, Dr. Fauci oversaw the U.S. response to the coronavirus pandemic, which Rodgers has frequently criticized and also downplayed. Rodgers would not give any evidence at all of Dr. Anthony Fauci owning a plethora of shares in Moderna. He would imply, though, that the United States government created HIV. This is where we are at with one of the faces of the most powerful sports league in the world, parroting these controversial, conspiratorial, know-nothing lines. And maybe we know the origin of some of these. I will share that in just a moment. Pink Villa wouldn't let us forget that Aaron Rodgers claimed Joe Biden is using a body double, a MAGA conspiracy staple that our own Michael Schur heard on the trail when interviewing Trump supporters. Rodgers would say, and I quote, "Joe Biden is really not Joe Biden." Hard-hitting stuff. Now this guy, Mark Polymeropoulos, is a former CIA senior intelligence officer. He saw the Rodgers HIV video and believes he found what Rodgers is reading, rather where his research came from. You know, the do your own research crowd. He'd write on Twitter, Aaron Rodgers is parroting a Soviet intelligence active measures campaign from the 80s. See pages 244 to 245 of The Sword and the Shield. So, would you like me to read it? Because, I mean, I can. Here we go. Probably the most successful anti-American active measure of the Gorbachev era, promoted by a mixture of overt propaganda and covert action by Service A, was the story that the AIDS virus had been manufactured by American biological warfare specialists at Fort Detrick in Maryland. An East German, Russian-born physicist, Professor Jacob Segal, claimed on the basis of circumstantial evidence, later wholly discredited, that AIDS had been artificially synthesized at Fort Detrick from 2 natural viruses. Thus fortified by spurious scientific jargon, the AIDS fabrication not merely swept through the Third World, but took in some of the Western media as well. In October 1986, the conservative British Sunday Express made it its main front page story. During the first 6 months of 1987 alone, the story received major news coverage in over 40 third world countries. At the very height of its success, however, the AIDS fabrication was compromised by a combination of Western protests and new thinking in Soviet foreign policy. "We tell the truth and nothing but the truth," Gorbachev proudly proclaimed at a Moscow press conference in July 1987. Faced with official American protests and the repudiation of the AIDS story by the international scientific community, the Kremlin, for the first time, showed signs of embarrassment at a successful active measures campaign. In August 1987, U.S. officials in Moscow were informed that the story was officially disowned, and Soviet media coverage of it came to an abrupt halt. There is more here. It's a little hard to see, but if you'd like to see it, check out Mark Polymeropoulos' Twitter page. Additionally, a writer from Outsports whose name is Jim Basinski would add the following, which is important context. "That's all nuts and not true. AZT is not the only treatment for HIV/AIDS and has proved so successful that it's still in use today. As for the rest, there's no point in stating facts to a conspiracy theorist like Rodgers, but suffice it to say, AIDS was not some government plot hatched some 40 years later. Big Pharma and Fauci could profit from another epidemic. For a long time, we wrote about Rodgers after he denied rumors he was gay, and later when he was critical of fans yelling homophobic slurs and celebrated the coming out of a gay former teammate. That was the Rodgers who was easy to cheer for, not the guy who has fallen for wacky conspiracy theories that come across as so unhinged, you wonder how it came to this."